Let's build an all-black PC inside this case, the ASUS Prime AP201 with tempered glass. Before we start building, let's go through all the parts in this build. So for the motherboard, I'm gonna go with the ASUS ROG Strix Z790i, which supports 12th and 13th gen Intel Core desktop CPUs. Speaking of CPUs, we have the Intel Core i5-13600K, which is gonna offer amazing performance paired with this ASUS dual OC GeForce RTX 4060 Ti. This thing's packing 8GB of GDDR6 VRAM, a dual fan setup, a vented backplate, and a super sleek and clean all black design. And going back to the CPU, to keep it cool, we're gonna use the ASUS ROG RYUJIN 3 360mm AIO liquid cooler. This comes with a 360mm radiator as well as a 3.5-inch LCD display, and underneath that is a fan to keep the motherboard VRMs nice and cool. What I also really love about this AIO liquid cooler is the included fans that can be magnetically daisy chained together, and it's super cool and convenient because you can just snap them in like that. I really appreciate that you don't have to mess with a bunch of different cables to individually link the fans together. It keeps the cable management nice and tidy and also simplifies the installation process. For RAM, we're gonna go with 32GB of Corsair's Vengeance RGB Pro DDR5 at 6000 megatransfers per second. For storage, we have a 2TB PCIe 5 SSD from Crucial, the T700, and this is gonna offer plenty of storage for any media and games that I plan on putting in this PC. To power everything, I'm gonna go with a 1000 watt 80 plus gold unit from NZXT. Completely overkill, you can definitely get away with 750 watts, but if you do want to replicate a build like this, going with a power supply that offers more power headroom would allow you to upgrade your parts more simply. I can just throw in an upgraded GPU in the future if I really wanted to. And of course, everything is going to go inside this case, the ASUS Prime AP201 with tempered glass. So this is what many people would consider a medium form factor case, but it's definitely smaller than a traditional ATX sized PC tower case. The cool thing about this form factor is that you can fit up to micro ATX motherboards inside here, a 360mm radiator at the top, as well as most full-size GPUs. For I/O, you obviously get the power button, 2 USB 3 Type A's, a USB Type C, and a mic and headphone jack. I also really like these screwless panels because you can easily yank them out. It just makes the installation process so much more simple. Now, downsizing your PC normally comes with many compromises. For example, you have to go with a significantly smaller power supply as well as a smaller CPU cooler, but I really like that this case supports most full-size desktop components, and it's still pretty portable because I can fit it under one of my arms and still bring it around to wherever I'm going. Also, with this smaller footprint, it takes up significantly less desk space than a traditional full-size tower, so if you have a desk that's not like 100 inches long, this case might be for you. Now that we went through all the parts in this build, if you want to check out any part that I mentioned, it'll all be linked in the description section of this video for your convenience. So now let's get to building. All right, so we have the motherboard right here. Let's open up the CPU socket, drop it in, push this down. The socket cover should come off. Lower the lever all the way, and there we go. The CPU is installed. Open up the RAM slots and then line this up and drop it in. Super simple process. 2 sticks. Okay, so got my screwdriver. Now let's unscrew this M.2 heatsink. And as you can see from this motherboard, I've used the thermal pad before, so it's a bit messy, but this thermal pad will fit. Insert at a 30-degree angle. Now we gotta put the M.2 heatsink back on and screw it down. Boom, there we go. Motherboard's all done. Next step is to put the back plate from the CPU cooler on the back of the motherboard so that we can mount the pump block. There we go, motherboard's all prepped. Let's grab the case right now and just pop out all the panels. With this motherboard, luckily the IO shield is already pre-installed, so let's grab it and just drop it in. Find the motherboard screws, and we just have to screw in 4 of them, thankfully. Front panel connectors. For the next step, let's install the power supply. So we just gotta unscrew the power supply bracket at the front. Put the power supply inside this bracket and then screw it down. While we're here, let's also unscrew this cable management bar right here. Now we can line up the power supply with the fan facing the front of the case so that it can intake fresh air. Now we can also plug in this power cable to the power supply and route all these power cables through to the other side of the case. Now let's plug in the motherboard 24-pin power cable, CPU power cable, up through here, and then just plug it in. Next step is the AIO liquid cooler, and we are gonna mount the top fans as exhaust. So it's gonna blow the heat out and up. Let's screw down the fans onto the radiator first. Now we gotta grab this radiator and the fans and just line it up with the top of the case. Now let's screw the radiator onto the top of the case. Now let's screw the pump block onto the CPU, and we can take off this cover right here, and let's just use the pre-applied thermal paste on the cold plate. And let's also plug in this pump cable to the pump header. Now we are just about ready to install the graphics card. Pull out the cover on the PCIe connector and unscrew the top two PCIe slot covers. Push down this clip here, and then we can lower down the GPU and screw it down. Let's plug in the GPU with an 8-pin PCIe cable. All right, we are just about done. I'm gonna clean up the cable management a little bit, close up the side panels, and we can turn this on and see if it works. All right, we just finished building this PC. Now let's turn it on. Okay, so right off the bat, the RGB is starting to light up. Since this is a tempered glass case, let's also peel the film. Oh, it broke. Not a very satisfying peel. Oh, this part's satisfying. Oh, I'm gonna get my fingerprints all over this. There we go, this is the finished build. I think this all black design looks super sleek, and you even get the RGB accents, though if you aren't a fan of RGB, you can always just turn them off with software. I'm personally a huge fan of monochromatic builds because I think the color clash of like 50 different colors just looks a little bit odd, but I think this looks really sleek and really classy. We have a black motherboard, black cooler, black fans, black GPU, black case obviously, and a black power supply with black power cables. Everything comes together really well inside this case, and the cherry on top is the tempered glass side panel because you can get a view inside your build and admire your hard work. As for how to upgrade this build in the future, I think the only thing I would do is add 3 extra intake fans at the bottom of the case to provide some fresh air for the components, namely the graphics card, though it isn't completely necessary since there are already 4 120mm fans passively intaking through the bottom and the back as well as the front of the case. And I think in terms of airflow, 4 fans in this case is already more than adequate. So thank you all so much for watching this PC build inside this ASUS AP201 case with tempered glass. And yet again, if you want to check out any of the parts I used inside this build, they'll all be linked in the description section of this video. And huge thanks to ASUS for sponsoring this video and sending over a bunch of parts to use in this build. Please consider liking this video and subscribing if you enjoyed this video.